excited to get started and dive into the content to challenge accepted, transform your sales team into a selling powerhouse with our amazing panelists and moderator today. But before we begin, I like to start things off with a fun icebreaker as folks trickle in. So, Michelle and Terry, I'd love to know as we're approaching the holiday season with Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, if you celebrate it, what are you the most excited about during the holiday season? Michelle, I'll pass it off to you first.
Oh, there's so many good things to be excited about. October to December is my favorite time of the year. I don't know. I'll probably have to go with Christmas. We have a 3-year-old son who's super like this is the year he like understands birthdays and Christmases. So he's super into Christmas right now and like the idea of Santa Claus. So for me, probably Christmas, although they're all so fun.
Yeah. I would say, so Halloween we're just not in love with it. You know, the trick-or-treating's cute. I like the kids. Thanksgiving, I'm looking forward to the food. My mom's an insane cook. And so all of the food she makes, I definitely eat well more than I should on Thanksgiving. And I think Christmas, I don't know if anybody else does this, but we've got 6 kids and the youngest now is 12. So it's not as exciting, you know, when they don't really have the same belief system, but you can still get texts from Santa. I don't know if you know that. So I still am signed up for this subscription. And every year we get, you know, the 12 days before Christmas, it's these texts from Santa. And so my kids think I'm a little goofy because I'm always like, hey, Santa, you know what? He's messaging you again. And it's hilarious. I love the spirit. I just love the spirit of Christmas. I think it's great.
Agreed. I love that. Well, I would also love to know where everyone is calling in from. So definitely leverage the chat. I see Toronto, I see New Jersey. So definitely let's hear where everyone is calling in from. So before we begin, I want to talk a little bit about Modern Sales Pros. So today's event is brought to you by the team at Modern Sales Pros. And for those of you who are not familiar, Modern Sales Pros is the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. Our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer questions they struggle to solve on their own and help them to see around corners they may not know about. We do this through our live session like the one you're at today, our online forum, and our quarterly summits. As well, we're getting back into in-person events soon, so stay tuned. We might come to a city near you. So if you're not already part of MSP, you'll be invited to join right after the event. And this event would not have been made possible without our amazing sponsor today, Allego. I'm going to say a few words about Allego, our sponsor today, who is brought to you by the team at Allego, and they represent the next era of sales enablement. They have a complete rep-centric platform that ensures that sellers have the skills, knowledge, and content they need to optimize team success in a virtual world. So I'm going to drop their link in the chat. So to learn more about Allego, definitely check them out. Now, before I pass it off to our awesome sponsors, I'm going to do some quick housekeeping notes. First and foremost, this event is being recorded, so don't worry if you have a colleague or friend that couldn't make it. You'll be able to access the key takeaways and recording after the event. As well, please leverage the Q&A panel. There's a Q&A right at the top hand corner, or leverage the chat as well. We have our awesome experts on the line with us today, so definitely take advantage of their wealth and knowledge. Now, speaking about our experts, I'm going to pass it off to Michelle, our moderator for today's session, to kick things off with introductions, passing it off to our panelists to introduce themselves and our discussion points and key takeaways, and then I'm going to be back for wrap up. So Michelle, take it away.
Thanks, Angelica. Hi, everyone. Happy Tuesday. I'm Michelle Oak. I'm the Director of Enterprise Sales at Loopio. For those of you who don't know or not familiar with Loopio, we're response software that makes submitting high-quality RFPs, due diligence questionnaires, security questionnaires faster and easier. I just celebrated my 1 year at Loopio, and prior to that, I spent the last 10 years at another SaaS organization called Cision, on the other end of the SaaS spectrum, so much larger organization, managing their enterprise sales team. Terry, I'd love an intro from you, please.
Yes, thank you very much. So Terry Long, CB Insights. I'm the VP of Revenue Enablement. We just recently changed our name. If you're not familiar with CB Insights, we actually provide data that no one else has to help you source new deals, new insights about potential vendors or partners, and really track more tech companies and markets so you can make better business decisions. I have been at CB Insights for about 18 months. Prior to that, I've been at both startups and enterprise organizations, spending the last 16 years in an enablement leadership role. And I spent about 10 years prior to that as a quota carrying rep myself. So enjoy both sides of the spectrum, but love being in enablement.
Brandon, we'd love an intro.
Yeah, thanks. Can everybody hear me?
We can.
Fantastic. Michelle, thanks for moderating. So my name is Brendan Sweeney. I'm the director of sales here from Allego. So what we do at Allego is we are a market leading sales enablement platform. We're a sales enablement platform that really focuses on winning not only your sellers, but their buyers. So we could talk a little bit more about that as we go through, but super excited to be joined by Terry and Michelle and excited to get to speak with everybody today. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'm really excited as well. So everyone, today we're diving into a topic that I'm really excited about: how to transform your team into a selling powerhouse. So similar to myself, many revenue leaders today are faced with immense pressures to develop, align, refine their hybrid sales force, and then all while dealing with rampant employee turnover. And then not to mention achieving quota as we navigate these sort of uncertain economic waters. Terry and I were just commiserating behind the scenes because it's both of our end of quarter coming up on the 31st. So we're in the middle or in the heat of the crunch right now. So it's a lot. And then on the reverse side, at Loopio specifically, our reps are continuously looking for ways to hone their craft, to level up, to learn, be better at what they're doing every day. So there's this real appetite for that as well. And then ultimately, our frontline reps need to sell quickly, consistently. But the good news, as we're going to dive in today, is that with the right tools and sales enablement programs, we do have an opportunity to transform the sales force into a data-driven, digital, and measurable powerhouse. Along with our two experts, we're going to dive into the topic today and give everyone some tactical advice on how to simply and efficiently develop your sales team without having to spend hours coaching, listening to calls yourself. So as you know, we've broken this out into 4 parts. The first part of the topic that we'll dive into is around peer-to-peer learning. This is one of the more challenging parts of having remote sales teams. I personally really miss the days of the bustling sales floor, being able to listen in, having your newer or more junior reps listen in on those higher tenured, high-performing reps. Terry, let's start with you first. First, I want to understand a little bit about your sales team at CB Insights, and then how you're fostering organic peer-to-peer learning.
So we, our sales team is probably modeled very similar to a lot of organizations. We have our SDR team, we have our AEs that are broken up both from a corporate, commercial, enterprise level, and then we have a strategic team. Peer-to-peer learning is, as you said, really difficult in this new remote/hybrid space. One of the decisions that we made as a leadership team about 6 weeks ago was to come up with a new model for helping the sales team really organize, and I would say more from a priority management perspective, their calendar. And so back in the day when we were in the field, like you said, we were in office Mondays and Fridays, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we were traveling. The question was, how do we reinvest our efforts to make that model work in a hybrid remote environment? So what we did is we actually created some templates, some templated calendars, and mandated that Mondays and Fridays are all your in-office meetings. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that is the time that you are selling. And as leaders and as peers, that's when you are actually shadowing. So you are following along, you are on calls. That's one part of the package. The second part of the package is for those peers, and in order to really understand what's happening and what's working, managers or other leaders or enablement highlighting which calls are actually representative of what good looks like, and then using, the conversational intelligence to distribute that in real time, whether it's Slack channels, emails, etc., but doing it in such a way that it's distilled down to, the second if need be, taking those snippets and then calling out not just, hey, take a second to look at this, but the why. Look at what this is. Why was this important? What did they do that demonstrated the right behavior, and what was the result of that? And so we're really taking that approach more and more throughout, the organization.
That's great. Thank you, Terry. Brendan, would love to get your thoughts on this too, especially Allego being the expert in this field. How are you facilitating peer-to-peer learning today? And tell us a little bit about your Salesforce as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Michelle. So Terry, it's interesting how you talked a little bit about how you guys have really focused on what you're going to do on each day, right? What's really going to be pay time or customer facing, and what we're going to use for more of our internal meetings. I love that idea or thought, really focusing. The Allego sales team is broken down pretty similar to Terry's, and I would imagine to yours, Michelle. A very traditional tech sales team where it's an SDR organization that's responsible for handling some inbound leads, as well as going outbound after net new logos. We also have AE teams in both the mid-market and the enterprise, account management organizations that focus on retaining and growing our customers. So very similar. I guess, like you mentioned, we were really uniquely set up for peer-to-peer learning because it's in our DNA here at Allego. We sell a platform that enables folks to peer learn all the time, right? But if you think about, like you mentioned, a lot of us have probably had a mentor or somebody in our career that we did a lot of our sales learning through osmosis by watching them or talking through leads and opportunities with them. And if you think about it, sellers want to really learn from other sellers, right? As much as we think they want to hear from us, they want to hear from the people that are in the trenches, handling the same objections, competing against the same competitors. So what we try to do is enable our sellers to share. So like Terry mentioned, whether it's sharing via Slack or recording quick snippets from their phones about field objections or win stories, competitive intelligence or market updates that they've heard, this allows our teams to start to collaborate on given situations that they may see in the market. One of the reasons that we use video in addition to Slack and other forms of communication is the staying power, right? You can organize it and collaborate on it, but also the ability for people to hear the context to what's being said inside of an opportunity. Terry mentioned it with snipping live calls. If you can get the context to a conversation or give feedback on how you would approach something, giving the pitch and tone to your voice or being on camera, we find that really helps people, start to execute on the learning.
I love this idea of like reps being in the field, leaving a meeting, and then taking this quick video and sending it to their peers or their manager. How are you finding adoption of that? I don't know about you guys, but sometimes in our sales team, we've got a balance. There's the high performers that need, crave, want attention. There's some that are like, I'm just going to be a lone wolf, do it on my own. How do you ensure consistency and adoption across your sales team when they've got all these powerful tools like video?
Are you asking me particularly or both of us?
Yeah, I'd love for you to go, Brendan.
Yeah, I think you're always right. You get the 80-20, right? There's, 80% of the people may not use it at all, and 20% of the people use it all the time. I think what you start to see is if you make it really easy, if you deliver shortcuts for folks to share content, or you incentivize them at the beginning, right? The carrot versus the stick, if you will, to share things, that can really help. The other piece that we've seen is with a lot of our customers, when we roll out, we say, let's start with something that they want to share or talk about. Maybe it's a win story. Salespeople are driven and they really like to brag every once in a while about an opportunity that they won. But we can glean insights and things to learn from inside of those opportunities. So if you can get them to naturally and organically start sharing small bits and pieces that may make them look good or feel good, you can then start to get them to utilize video for other things like asking for help or sharing areas where they may need a little bit of shoring up from a training standpoint.
Yeah, I would just add on, I think all of those are accurate to what we're seeing. The top down, ensuring that at the highest level, the executive team is not only supporting, but demonstrating and leading by example, that has to exist in order for you to have consistency and buy-in. I think the other piece of that, to your point, Brendan, is like what's in it for them. It's one thing for us in enablement or as leaders to say, hey, we want you to do this. But where we run into roadblocks is not thinking about what value it's providing the field. And is there something that they actually are getting out of it? Or is it just another administrative task? So making sure before you like action on those, you're getting, you're really going to what these are our customers, the field's our customers. So going to them and saying, hey, is this valuable to you? If so, how? And making sure that the why and the what's in it for me is absolutely clear.
Terry, you're the resident sales enablement expert here, and you've spent so long in sales enablement and revenue enablement. How have you seen the role of video change over the years? Because I think like the last 2 or 3 years, it's been more prevalent than ever. What's the impact of having video introduced into sales enablement programs?
So I love it personally. I think there's an incredible amount of value. Brandon hit on it at first, and that is it's the context of the communication can get lost very quickly in translation via email, via text. I mean, just look at yourself when you text people and you go, what do they mean by that? Am I taking that the right way? So being able to have video to really understand, am I relating to this individual across the screen? That's one piece. I think where it's become more difficult is we generationally have to look at the learners and make sure we understand what they're comfortable with. So I call this the digital body language. And how is enablement supporting what digital body language is? I know at CBI, we had to take a very concerted effort to start from square one, which is simple things. How do you show up to the call? Visually, what do you look like? What's behind you? Is it representative of you, the organization? What does your body language look like? Are you distracted? Are you looking at a different computer? It's some very basic things that I think innately many of us think about on our own, but generationally, there's other people that don't. It's just not coming to them as a, it's more of an afterthought. So helping them understand how do you standardize, like what is the ideal approach? And again, we go back to, it's not that it's just the right approach. Here's the why behind it. Here's the impact both to your prospect, to your customer. And, this is the result that you can expect.
That's great. Brendan, I don't know if you have anything to add. I know asynchronous video is really important to the team at Allego. Anything else that we want to touch on around this concept of asynchronous video?
I was just going to add on to what Terry said. I think the pandemic also accelerated this, right? There was, if you think about before, people weren't often on video in our careers in meetings, even if they were remote. In the digital age and the new generation that we have that's used to TikTok and Instagram and everything is video-based content for them, I think starts to accelerate it a little bit more. So completely agree with Terry there.
I want to spend a little bit of time now on this, something that I think is a hot topic, the idea of conversational intelligence. As a preference, as we know, conversational intelligence is a software that uses artificial intelligence to analyze speech or text in order to derive data-driven insights, both for all of your customer-facing staff. Brendan, I know conversation intelligence is a big part of the Allego platform. Would love to hear more about how your team and customers are using these analytics today. And maybe define conversational intelligence for us a little bit.
Yeah, the way that we think about conversational intelligence is the ability to record, organize, and discover live conversations that are happening with our prospects, our partners, or even internal meetings that may take place across multiple different divisions, right? So it allows us to be in the moment, to Terry's point, on these calls where we can really engage with customers and prospects and leave the note taking or all of the things that we used to do on pads of paper in front of us to the conversational intelligence tool. I mean, if you think about what it does just as much for management and coaches as it does for individuals, right? So obviously for management, for enablement, it gives us insight into the conversations, the messaging, the competitive intelligence that we have in our market. But if you think about our teams, I mean, my team is constantly viewing calls of their own. They're viewing calls from other sellers to learn lessons a little bit quicker than they may have if they had to have, 5-6 conversations where they skin their knees. We often see as well people using what we call show reels, where essentially you can search inside of the conversation intelligence suite for a product, a topic, a objection that you may have had. And what the product does is actually combines multiple conversations from across all of our sellers into a show reel. So imagine a Sports Center top 10 where I can listen to Terry and Michelle and Kevin speak about a particular topic and watch it in quick and rapid succession. So it's really helped us to not only, engage our sellers in what they may want to do on a call, give us insight into what's happening with our market, but it's allowed people to be in the moment on these calls, which I think is so important as we're in a hybrid world.
Mm-hmm. Terry, would love your take on conversational intelligence too, and how it's playing a part at your organization.
So it plays a heavy role at our organization. We're continuing to expand how we use it. But I would say across the board, it's increased our ability to drive productivity, increase ramp. It supports onboarding. It supports evergreen training. So we are doing the same thing where we'll actually identify key themes. We'll use it for our win-loss analysis. We're using it in our coaching and our ability to quickly identify what's working, what's not working. Where do we have, again, low-hanging fruit to develop out potentially different learning paths? We are taking it and using the insights for product information. What else does this tell us about our product or about our competitors or what's happening in the market? And so, again, I think there's definitely an unlimited and probably I would say untapped ability to use the conversational intelligence today. We've got a lot more work we can do with it, but we are taking it and we're identifying what's the problem we're trying to solve is the first question. And then looking at how can conversational intelligence help us do that more quickly. And if that is the case, where else, I think from a feedback perspective, where else can we leverage that insight and feed that to other key stakeholders to make better business decisions? And so we're looking at it more holistically at an organizational level, not just focused on what it can tell us in revenue enablement or the sales leadership.
And how much of the insights are going back to the sales team automatically versus channeling through the management team for coaching purposes?
For us, it is somewhat limited because we are having, based on the trackers that we've set up, it's really, again, what is the most impactful information for us today, based on what we're driving today. Those are the automatic alerts. So from a deal perspective, any deals that might be at risk, that's an alert that managers are getting every single day, especially as we get to close, quarter end close.
Right.
Things that we might be looking at from a multi-threading perspective, not having multiple contacts within an organization, and early indicators that a deal might be at risk, or not having had contact with, the champion or the economic buyer, whoever is listed. Those are some things that are regular being communicated more in a more, more detailed view is what revenue enablement is gathering and then curating information and insights to give to the executive team to say, this is what we're seeing. This is our hypothesis based on what we're seeing, and using that as a way to have a better conversation about what should we be doing next.
That's great. And then Brendan, for you, are you doing it in a similar way so outside of coaching, what are some other applications you're using conversation intelligence for? This topic's really interesting for me because I think at Loopio, we're just starting to scratch the surface. I think to your point, Terry, we're doing a lot more of the deal coaching individually, but I'd love to hear more about the insights that are going up to your senior leadership team or the learnings for the rest of the organization, because that piece is really interesting.
Yeah, Michelle, we use it a lot when we launch new messaging or new products or new features in the product to give product marketing or our product team insight into how those messages are being received in the marketplace. So that may not be so much about the seller and their execution of the deal. It may be about the receptiveness of the market or the objections that we're getting. They use it a lot for competitive intelligence, right? Obviously, when we're in market and we're working competitive deals, we're hearing lots of tidbits of information about our competitive set. So being able to mine that information over many, many calls and dozens of sellers allows our competitive intelligence team and our product marketing team to glean insights on a regular basis versus waiting 3, 6, 9 months for that national sales meeting where somebody gets up and says, hey, this is what I've heard, right? So those are a couple of key ways that we've heard it. And back to Terry's point about insights that we give the salespeople, basic things about talk time or words per minute, crutch words, number of switches or questions. Those things can be really good for a junior seller to give as a rule of thumb to say, during a discovery call, you should be doing more listening than talking, right? Little quick things that they can go in and view above and beyond all of the higher level intelligence that we're getting out of the calls as a management team.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you brought that up, Brendan. I'll just add on there. We just rolled out, we did some high and low performer analysis, and we used the conversational intelligence so we could balance out both qualitative and quantitative insights. And what it did for us is it really helped us come up with that ideal rep profile, the IRP. So we could say from a talk time perspective, from an interactivity, all of those elements, and there's a lot that you can look at, but based on your business and what works for you, it allowed us to get to that, what does best in class look like, and help use that as a learning path and additional coaching. This is the coaching that these reps need. So it's included in the scorecards, the quarterly scorecards that the managers are getting, and they're able to take more clear action on it.
One more thing I would add too, and Terry brought this up earlier about bringing, what is in it for the reps and how do we get them to adopt this? Something that we've seen be hugely successful utilizing conversation intelligence is based on keywords and triggers and alerts, like Terry mentioned. Right. If we hear about a particular competitor or objection, automatically serving up and sending to our seller a piece of content or a video that they can view that will help them in that particular deal makes it really actionable. So those are some other alerts that we've set up. So instead of just letting them know that the deal's at risk, saying, hey, Brendan, we heard about a particular competitor in this deal. Here's the battle card on how to compete against this competitor, making it actionable and something that they can leverage.
And that's a great point. For both of you, one of the things I struggle with, and sort of one of the topics today, is this concept of like how much time we have to invest in it. The way you have conversation intelligence set up at each of your organization today, what does that look like for frontline managers? Is there a lot of work that goes into it, or is it like quick insights that are sort of derived from what you're learning? Do you have dashboards set up?
I mean, I can jump in really quick. I'm sure Brendan's actually got a ton on this coming from his organization. We do have deal boards set up. We do have those alerts, the feeds that are going to managers. What I would say to your question about like how much time, it's really based on how valuable is the information that you're trying to get? How valuable is it? What are you trying to solve? So it goes back to, are there things that we use it for related to onboarding? And is there an investment made there? Or from a coaching perspective and a coaching culture, is there a time investment where you need to be in there coaching using conversational intelligence to anchor on, hey, are the reps doing this? Are they doing that? Are they demonstrating the right behaviors and the right talk tracks? So there's those pieces, but it really goes back to, where do they see the most value? What I would tell you based on our ideal managers and our ideal reps, the ones that are performing the best are using these types of tools and this functionality. They're using it and they're getting savvy to the point where they're providing us good ideas where they go, hey, I just uncovered this. Is there a way that we can actually duplicate this for other managers? And so I would say it's definitely underutilized. I will always say we can do more with it.
Obviously, we're in a bit of a different boat, right? Because we drink our own champagne. So we put a lot of emphasis on them leveraging the conversation intelligence tool. As far as how we save time and make it a little bit more scalable, our reps do a lot of peer coaching. Right now, we have an entire team that they submitted 2 calls into a channel together, and now they all go in and give each other feedback on how they may have handled a particular point in time on that call. The other thing that we do a lot, Michelle, is we have the ability to comment in line on the call and mention somebody. So I may say, hey, Terry, could you listen to this particular snippet, this 2-3 minute section? This is really where I need help. And that helps us break down a 60-minute call into those 2 or 3 minutes that are really actionable. I think that's a best practice. If you can focus in on there's a lot of fluff in a lot of sales calls, right? There's the introduction that everybody's used to. There's the scheduling time at the end and the goodbyes and the bonding and rapport. But if we can focus on those 4 or 5 minutes where we can really make a deal move, I think that's the best place to spend our time.
Yeah. I'm gonna anchor on or pin what Brandon said, which is if you can get to the point where that peer-to-peer learning is so actionable that they go in and do the inline and the at mention, again, we love that environment, especially generationally. It's like the instant gratification of this just happened. Here's the at mention. I'm going to go spend 2 minutes on it. And here's my response. That feedback loop, the coaching they're getting is so much more impactful than waiting for the next one-on-one or, the ride along to go, hey, how did I do? Well, it was a week ago and I don't remember. I don't remember the context. So again, it's just such a huge win that way.
I love that idea, Brandon, of doing those feedback calls asynchronously. Today, our sales team does, our enterprise team will do a peer call every week. So we'll get together live 30 minutes. 1 week we'll do a call review, 1 week is a deal review, and the team rotates. The thing I find challenging about that is it's all subject to people's schedules and blocking off that 30 minutes. And as we know, especially as we approach end of quarter, if a customer calls, that comes first. So I love this idea of like posting it and people asynchronously sort of reviewing it. I think we have to try that.
It gives a voice to others too, Michelle, because there's often people, I love to talk, right? So if you get me on a call and you want me to coach, I'm going to give you all my opinions. We have brilliant people on our sales team that will sit back during a 60-minute session and they may not say anything, but they have tremendous ideas. If you give them the ability to do it asynchronously and comment on it, and they feel comfortable, behind their keyboard, some of the ideas that we get are tremendous. So it gives different people a voice as well.
Absolutely. As we go into the last few minutes, I just want to remind everyone, please feel free to throw in your Q&A. We will have some time for Terry and Brendan to answer some questions. So if anything has provoked any ideas or questions, please let us know. I want to round out this conversation with like real life examples of enablement tools, tactics that our audience can take away and implement at their own organizations. I've picked up a couple of great things that I want to try out already. Anything we haven't talked about today that's like a must try that's working? I'd love to start with you, Terry.
A must try that's working. I would say I can't tell you that this is going to work yet, but I'm going to tell you that this is what we're trying. We're working on this week. There's an opportunity, I believe, to simplify and curate what would be like a digital flashcard. So how do we take this back to, again, aging myself, what it was like when I had to put together flashcards in grade school? We don't have those types of interactions. And the difference is the learning hasn't changed. Everybody still needs to learn, and we have the same learning styles. There are platforms out there and there's tools out there, and we are just starting down the path of, can we leverage more of a digital flashcard that will be helpful because it can go to their mobile phone. They can do it when it makes sense. It's quick, it's easy. It's like the TikTok. It's right there, and it's going to take me a couple seconds to do, but it's a reinforcement method. And so that's something that we're looking to curate and test out with the teams. I feel like that's a piece that's missing because we've moved from these robust recorded trainings to more of the bite size, and we're trying to make them more and more actionable. And the reality is our attention spans and their attention spans, the learners, is getting smaller and shorter and shorter. And so we're really looking at how do we respond to that, because we need to. It's the reality of where we're at. We're not going to change how their minds have developed over the technology boom in the last 10, 15 years. So how does enablement respond to that?
I think that's so true, especially if we think about how the dynamic has changed from being in person 5 days a week, locking people in a room and presenting on different topics, to now it's hard to gauge engagement when you're doing remote learning, when you're doing asynchronous video. So I love that idea of like more bite-sized content more often delivered right to them. Brandon, what are some must-do sales enablement tricks that you're trying?
So what we've seen is, what we've talked a lot about a little here, is there's Zoom fatigue. right? People are going from meeting to meeting to meeting for live events. So we've been trying to put together subject matter expert series, right, where they can deliver on a weekly or a monthly basis a quick high velocity insight. So for instance, our director of product marketing, his name is Jake Miller. Jake does a weekly video called Jake's Take. It's his take on the product market fit, where we differentiate, where we're winning, where we're losing. And he's able to deliver in 5 or 6 minutes key questions and answers that the sales team is looking for. And then they're able to engage on that asynchronously. So, you know, we have our senior leaders recording these weekly kind of series, if you will, right? Almost like a TV show where the sellers can take 5 or 6 minutes to consume knowledge and information without having to, especially like you mentioned, you're both at the end of your quarter. Sellers don't have time to take 60 minutes out, right, across multiple time zones, multiple teams. So these quick hit high velocity insights are great. And what Terry mentioned is something that's super important to us too. I mean, people learn at different rates, right? So people on Terry's team, someone may memorize the flashcards on week 1. Someone else may take 3 or 4 weeks to get to proficiency on that particular topic. But if Terry's able to leverage that type of technology at the end of that, what we call flash drill, everybody will have been certified that they have that knowledge. So that's a brilliant, brilliant area of focus.
Absolutely. And thanks, Amanda, for that comment. Absolutely. Short, simple, articulate. I'd love to maybe spend a couple of minutes thinking about like new employees or new sales team that join the organization. What are you doing from like a ramp enablement perspective using tools like video? How much does that play into that sort of initial ramping or onboarding period?
Well, for us, tools are critical. I think we look at it a couple different ways. One, there is a 101 and a 201 series as it relates to tools, meaning the 101 is just fundamentally, what is it? Why do I care that I even have access to this? And at a high level, how do I engage with it? 201 is the deep dive into how do I really engage? How do I be strategic? The other angle to that is at an organizational level, we look at our tech stack and we look at the strategy. So where do the tools align to the sales stages? Who from a seller perspective engages with those tools? At what level are they engaging? And more importantly, where do we have optimization opportunities? So we spend a lot of time looking at that data to help inform us of what needs to shift from an onboarding and a learner perspective. But I would say all in all, it's very important because of this hybrid world we're in. We cannot function without it. And so not losing sight of that, but not overcomplicating it. I think that would be the biggest message. It doesn't have to be complicated. Keep it simple, keep it organized, but simple enough that, anybody can learn how to do it, and making sure that people are patient in their adoption of certain tools, because learners learn at different times at different rates. And so making sure that you've got backup plans in place to help that reinforcement and really get people over any kind of hurdles they're having.
We're very similar, Terry, where we kind of chunk and layer based on the sales process. We understand that these sales cycles can be long. So we don't want to train somebody on week 1 for something that they may not need to leverage until 9, 12 months down the road. So we really try to line it up with the different stages of our sales process and cycle. And then even the things that we introduce folks to in the 101 and 201 level sections, we always try to, like you mentioned, organize and make that content accessible for what we call just-in-time learning down the road, right? So that now I'm finally in my first negotiation with my new company, and I forget what I learned 4 months ago about our give gets and our negotiation tactics. I can go back and pull from that course or that information in real time right when I need it. So it's a mixture of both for us.
Yeah. I think the last thing I would say, Michelle, and we're going through this right now, figuring out how to streamline and optimize your platforms, your tools, because we're at this point in time where every tool is available. There's so many tools that you get lost in the noise of like, what's the best tool? And so going through that tech stack strategy and figuring out where can we optimize our integrations and where can we layer, what's our single source of truth? Where do we layer tools on top of each other to help support and drive the most productive seller? And so going through that motion, it's a big exercise, but it's very valuable because, again, keeping it simple, it's a lot easier for a seller to stay within one system, knowing that they can connect within that one system to the other 5 that they're going to need as they go through their sales motion. But it takes time and it doesn't work for every platform. So you just have to be cognizant, but that's, over engineering how many tools you have in your tech stack can actually be fundamentally a deterrent in your productivity.
Absolutely. Thanks, both of you. Any questions from the audience that have come up throughout? Please let us know. If not, we'll wrap up in a couple of minutes with sort of some key takeaways. Why don't we get started with that? And maybe that'll spark some questions. Terry, Brandon, we talked about and covered a lot today. What's one piece of like tactical advice that's most important? That's like a showstopper for people to take away from today. I don't know, Brendan, if you want to start.
Yeah, Terry actually just alluded to it. It's consolidation, right? Converging sales technologies is something that we see across organizations, especially as you get into economic headwinds. But I'm sure many of you who are in the enablement space started to acquire tools over the last several years, and you woke up one day and you have 5, 10, 15 different sales tools, right? You have sellers logging into multiple different places to do oftentimes the same thing. So if you can find places to consolidate their energy so that they only have to go to one place, they have one version of the truth, I think that's a big area that we've seen. There's some crazy stat out there about like 40 or 50% of organizations are leveraging 5 or more sales enablement technologies, right? There's something for conversation intelligence. There's something for onboarding. There's something for content. There's something for flashcards, like Terry just mentioned. If you can bring that all under one roof, you can gain adoption much faster.
Yeah, 100%. For me, it's know your seller. I do think that is it's just an underappreciated conversation. So the higher you move in the organization, the more important it is for you to just spend time having that conversation with your sellers and doing it on a regular cadence, asking the questions, what's working, what's not working, where are you struggling, and being real with them to know that you are taking that information and collating that in such a way that you can actually bring back some additional recommendations. Because oftentimes I think it goes back to we have our own perceptions of what we think will work, but we haven't really heard it from the horse's mouth. And so making sure that you take the time on a quarterly basis to have those types of conversations with your sellers.
Absolutely. We've got a couple of questions that have come in that I'm really excited about. Thanks, Sabina, for asking this question. Her question is, as a successful and seasoned sales leaders, what would your advice be for someone who's newly starting out in a sales leadership role? Maybe Terry, if you want to start first.
So what advice? This is such a loaded question. I'll ask a follow-up question. Is it within a certain area? Is there just a certain directionally, or is it just, hey, day one, I'm going into sales leadership? I don't know if we can see that.
Sabina, maybe post it in the chat.
Let me look. So I'll just take it from the question of like, what is your advice to a new sales leader? My first thing would say, or my first answer would be, sales enablement would be my focus. Okay. I would say one, meet with your sales enablement leader and ask directionally, what is their objective? What are they trying to accomplish? Ensure that whatever they're trying to accomplish is aligned to the organizational goals. So make sure that you've validated, this is what we're trying to achieve. It does align to the organizational objectives. And then the next question is just, how do we collaborate together to make sure that we're making joint decisions? I would say nothing will get off track faster than a sales leader running with what they believe enablement should do, and enablement running down a whole nother path of what they think enablement should do. It's very confusing for the field. It's very confusing for it's a loss, a major loss of productivity. So I would say the first thing is to really anchor in on understanding what is it that you're trying to achieve in your role, and then figuring out what does that path look like? How do we partner?
Brendan, from your perspective as a sales leader, I think Sabina is looking specifically also for the SDR group. What would be a tip or a trick?
Yeah, for me, for SDRs especially, it's about giving them a grand vision for their path as well, right? I mean, oftentimes it's their first job inside of a tech organization or their first job overall, and it can be overwhelming for the amount of information that they're going to receive. So if you can lay out a path for success and give them time with others who have been in their shoes that are now successful in other roles inside of the organization, I think that allows people to buy in. And to Terry's point, having alignment between enablement and sales leadership. I mean, quite frankly, we don't have any successful customers that don't have that alignment. If there's misalignment between enablement and sales leadership on how we're going to impact the SDR or AE or whoever it is, that's a huge area that you should be focused on.
The thing I'll layer in on top is something we've sort of been talking about throughout, which is this concept of your tech stack and data. So I think especially important for an SDR team is to understand the data points that you have and what's in your tech stack and how to use it effectively. I would say I spent the first few months in sales leadership more like just putting out fires or understanding like where to place my focus without really understanding the data behind it. So why are reps more effective than others? Why are the high performers high performing? Why are the underperformers not performing as well? So I think there's got to be a balance of focus on the individual one-on-one, but then zooming out to understand like your whole playing field. What's happening? What is the data that you're seeing? What are risks to the business? Like start to make that type of analysis too from that strategic level.
Michelle, I'll add something in there from an SDR lens. It just something that actually we experienced, not at CBI, but at another organization. The SDRs, we're running into some issues with not executing on MQLs and struggling, looking at data like crazy. What's going on? What is happening? And fundamentally, what we actually uncovered is when we asked the question, one, do you know what an MQL is? And do you know why it's important? The answer was no. And so I would also encourage you to look at it from the lens of make sure your SDR team understands what their role is, how their role impacts the organization's ability to make revenue. Because going into it as an SDR saying, well, I'm just an SDR. That's my favorite thing when they say that. I'm like, no, you're not. You're like this spear. You're like tip of the spear. But making sure they understand what is it that my role does exactly. I know how to action on all of those things. I understand the impact. And then even boiling it down for them even further so that you kind of reverse engineer into how am I going to get to that goal? If I have a quota of so many SQOs, for instance, what does my activity need to look like, and breaking that down for them? Because that's another miss we see every company I've been with, we've seen where they say, well, great, if I do 10 calls a day, or if I have, 50 dials a day, that's probably enough. Well, actually it's not. And let me show you how to model that and show you how much your activity will actually impact your ability to meet your quota. So that's a really important exercise to make sure that, you're going through.
Yeah, understanding the what is your why and your behavior cookbook, those two things are so hugely important for any level of salesperson.
Yeah.
This is a question from Victoria, probably great for Terry to respond to. When building out a sales team, what would you say is the best time to start looking into hiring your enablement department or team?
It's a great question. I don't know that there's a magic answer, but what I would look at is when do you need to ensure that you have consistent, scalable, measurable activities taking place? So if you now have 5, 10, 15, understand that in order for you to be successful, you're going to have to scale and actually duplicate the right types of things. Are you set up in an environment where that can happen? And a lot of times in that kind of player coach, or I'm a sales leader and I'm training, you'll hit that point where there's just no return, and you'll actually see all of the diminishing returns because there isn't a consistent training, there isn't a consistent coaching. So I think you have to just look at the balance there. I would always say that training and enablement is a phenomenal strategic investment and should be considered much sooner than a lot of people think. Obviously, if you can do it early stage, a lot of companies do, but I would not hesitate. I would not wait. The second it starts feeling like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to scale this, or I'm not consistent, that's the time where you need to make sure you have that support.
We've got a question here from Travis. Brendan, this might be in your wheelhouse. What is the average use of artificial intelligence for data collection, sales training, best practice learning currently compared to what you would like to have or forecasted to obtain? I'm not sure I understand this question correctly, Brendan, but maybe you can.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. So Travis, when you say collection of sales training best practices, what exactly are you hoping for AI to collect or get me to answer from an AI standpoint? Maybe you could put that in the QA there as well. We have a couple of thoughts on AI, so we can take it in a couple of different directions. I will say just generally, artificial intelligence can be really good when we talk about conversation intelligence or video to get talk time and pace and discover topics and surface those up. One area where we've seen some issues with artificial intelligence when it comes to sales enablement is the automated grading or feedback of video pitches or objection handling. I think it's tough for especially the older generation of sellers to take feedback from a computer on how their pitch was or how good their story was, right? And once they get one poor grade or two poor grades from an AI machine, they may stop engaging. The other thing that we've seen is some of the younger folks know how to game it a little bit, right? Using AI, we're looking for keywords. So, hey, if I say these 4 or 5 words, I'm going to get a 5 out of 5 score. So I would just be careful about how much you leverage it. I think it's good from a management perspective, maybe to focus me in on areas within a recording or a path that I should focus on, but it still takes an expert like Terry or humanistic touch to go in and actually give meaningful coaching and feedback. Just don't think it's there yet. Terry, do you have any thoughts on AI as it pertains?
Yeah, I think I would agree with everything you said. And if the question is around, do you use AI 50% of the time as opposed, again, I'm going to go back to what I always say. What is it that you're trying to solve for? And that should help you determine what tools that you should be using, shouldn't be using to get that information. I would, like I said before, it's almost unlimited at this point. AI just every day amazes me. I go in and I'm like, I didn't even know we could do that. But you do need to use it as a data point. It cannot be your one-stop shop for determining whether or not someone is successful or whether or not, your product is resonating. It just needs to be another data point that you use in addition to everything else to make really good business decisions. I would absolutely say if you're not using it, you should be.
Yes.
Conversational intelligence is one of those platforms that in any organization, if I was at and they didn't have it, that would be my first purchase. You need it. You need it for so many different reasons because there's so many different use cases. So I guess I don't know if that helps answer Travis's question, but that's where I would lean.
Thank you, Terry, Brendan. You guys have both been fabulous. So many good insights that we have to take away. Angelica, why don't we pull you back up for our closing comments?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm back, and thank you so much for attending today's event. I want to say a big thanks to Terry and Brendan for providing their amazing insights today on this awesome topic, as well as Michelle for moderating today's event. Thank you, everyone, for asking your awesome questions as well. Quick reminder that this event is being recorded as well. The key takeaways and all the resources mentioned will be up on the MSP website by the end of the day. And be sure to check out our sponsor, Allego. I'm going to drop their link in the chat as well. They're doing amazing stuff. So thank you again for attending, and we'll see you at the next event. And then speakers, if you want to go backstage, we'll see you there.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Everyone.